My son left me with the kids, but my granddaughter whispered the truth. They were plotting to send me away and take my money. They didn't expect me to be one step ahead. It all started with my granddaughter Emma, that sweet little 8-year-old with eyes like sapphires. One sunny afternoon, while she was coloring at the kitchen table, she leaned over and whispered words that hit me like a freight train. "Grandma, I heard Mommy and Daddy say they're putting you in a home today and taking your money." I froze, my hand still on her soft curls, trying to keep my smile steady so she wouldn't see the wildfire of rage igniting in my chest. I patted her head, told her not to worry, and said we'd play a little game later. But inside, I was seething. Brian and Jessica had no idea what they'd just unleashed. I wasn't some helpless widow they could push around. I was Margaret Sullivan, and I was about to remind them who they were dealing with. Let's rewind a bit to set the stage. 18 months earlier, my world had crumbled when my husband, Frank, died suddenly of a heart attack. We'd been married 32 years, raised a son, built a life in a beautiful 3-bedroom home filled with memories. His death left me gutted, like someone had ripped out half my soul. Brian and Jessica swooped in right after the funeral, all fake tears and crocodile smiles. "Mom, you can't live alone anymore," Brian said, his voice dripping with concern. "Come stay with us. We'll take care of you." I was grieving, vulnerable, and I bought it. I thought it was love. So I sold my house, the one Frank and I had poured our hearts into, and moved in with them. The sale brought in $600,000, which I handed over to help pay off their debts. Biggest mistake of my life. Living with them was like signing up to be their live-in nanny and personal ATM. I watched Emma while they went out 3 nights a week, helped with her homework, cooked dinners, and paid for groceries. My social security check straight to their mortgage. Babysitting saved them $800 a month. And every time I mentioned getting my own place, Brian would hit me with a guilt trip. "Mom, Emma needs you. You're so good with her. Besides, at your age, don't you want to be with family?" At my age, I was 67, not 97. I could drive, cook, think, and, as it turns out, plot a comeback better than they could ever imagine. Emma's whisper that day was the spark that lit the fuse. While she colored her rainbows and unicorns, I stepped into the next room and called my lawyer, David Morrison. We'd gone to high school together, and he'd handled Frank's will. "David, it's Maggie. I need an emergency appointment today. Can you meet me at 2?" His voice crackled with concern. "Everything okay, Maggie?" I smirked. "Let's just say some chickens are about to come home to roost." Next, I called my bank. "This is Margaret Sullivan, account number 47,789. I need to transfer funds immediately." The rep confirmed what I already knew. Thanks to Frank's life insurance and our savings, I had $637,412, way more than Brian and Jessica ever dreamed I had. They thought they were dealing with a broke old lady. They were about to meet a warrior. I looked at Emma, blissfully unaware, and ruffled her hair. "Sweetie, want to help Grandma with a special project?" Her eyes lit up. "What kind?" "The kind that teaches people not to count their chickens before they hatch." At 1:30, I told Emma we were going for a walk. I grabbed my purse, the one I'd started carrying everywhere since Frank died, stuffed with my IDs, bank cards, and important papers. Call it widow's intuition, but I'd sensed trouble brewing. We met David at the corner coffee shop, his face creasing with worry as I laid out their plan. "They think I'm some helpless old woman they can just dispose of," I told him. "They're about to learn otherwise." David nodded, his jaw tight. "What do you want to do?" "Everything," I said. "New will, revoke their power of attorney, transfer my accounts, the works. And David, I want it done before they get back from their errands." As we headed to his office, Emma skipped beside me, humming a tune, oblivious to the storm I was about to unleash. In David's office, while Emma played with toys in the waiting room, I let the truth sink in. I'd been so blind. The signs were there from the start, but grief makes you stupid. After Frank's funeral, Brian pushed me to sell the house. "The market's hot, Mom. You'll get top dollar, and we'd love having you close." I thought it was love, but it was greed. Jessica's eyes had gleamed when she heard the sale price, and their sudden warmth after years of barely tolerating me should have been a red flag. They'd isolated me too, telling my book club I was too busy, shooing away church friends, cutting me off from everyone who cared, but they made one fatal mistake. They underestimated me. David slid papers across his desk. "This revokes their power of attorney and makes me your agent. This transfers your accounts to a new bank they don't know about. And this," he said with a grin, "is your new will." I signed with a flourish, my hand steady as steel. "What about the house money I gave them?" David's smile turned sharp. "Since there's no formal loan agreement, we can argue it was a gift contingent on you living there permanently. If they breach that, they owe it back. Every penny, plus interest." I glanced at my watch, 2:45. They'd be home by 4, expecting to ship me off to Shady Oaks nursing home. Instead, they'd find a woman who'd just reclaimed her life. Emma burst in, bored of the waiting room. "Grandma, are we done with the boring grown-up stuff?" "Almost, sweetheart. One more stop at First National Bank, where I'd been a customer for 40 years. Emma munched a lollipop in the kids' area while I met with Janet, the branch manager. "Mrs. Sullivan, you want to transfer everything today? Checking, savings, CDS, all of it?" I nodded. "To a new account at Commerce Bank across town." Janet's fingers hesitated over her keyboard. "That's a substantial amount. Are you sure?" I thought of Brian's shifty eyes that morning, Jessica's too tight hug, how they'd left me with Emma to run errands. I've never been more sure of anything in my life. The transfer took an hour, $637,412, every cent of Frank's insurance, our retirement savings, the house proceeds, and decades of careful living. Money they thought they'd control once they had me locked away. Janet raised an eyebrow. "Why the urgency?" I smiled. "Some people are about to learn you don't count your chickens before they hatch." By 3:30, Emma and I were back home. I sent her to play and started cooking their favorite pot roast with mashed potatoes. If this was my last meal in their house, it'd be one they'd never forget. As I peeled potatoes, I imagined their morning conversation. "The appointment at Shady Oaks is at 5, Brian probably said. "We'll tell her after dinner. By tomorrow, she'll be settled, and we'll start the power of attorney paperwork." They'd already planned their spending. Jessica wanted a new SUV SUV, Brian a kitchen remodel, maybe even a European vacation. They thought they had me cornered. They were so wrong. At 3:45, their car pulled into the driveway. I smoothed my apron, checked my reflection in the kitchen window, and looked every bit the harmless grandmother. Perfect. They walked in, voices loud and cheerful, overcompensating for their guilt. Mom, we're home, Brian called. Something smells amazing. Just making your favorite? I replied, my tone light. Emma's in her room. How were your errands? A pause. Fine, Jessica said too quickly. Just running around town. I hid my smile. In an hour, they'd learn I'd been running circles around them. Dinner was a performance. I served their plates with care, asked about their day, complimented Jessica's haircut. They squirmed, exchanging nervous glances, thinking I didn't notice. This roast is incredible, Mom, Brian said, barely touching his food. You outdid yourself. I wanted tonight to be special, I said, smiling. You never know when things might change. Jessica nearly choked. Change? What do you mean? Oh, just life, dear. Nothing stays the same forever. The tension was thicker than the gravy. At 7 o'clock, Brian cleared his throat. Mom, can we talk in the living room? Emma, go play. Here it comes, I thought. We sat, them on the couch, me in my favorite chair by the window. Brian fidgeted. Jessica stared at the coffee table. Mom, he started, we think it might be time for you to consider other living arrangements. I tilted my head, all innocence. Like my own apartment? Jessica jumped in, her voice syrupy. More like assisted living, somewhere with people your age, activities, medical staff. You mean a nursing home? I said sharply. It's not a nursing home, Brian said quickly. It's a lovely community, Shady Oaks. We visited today. I leaned back, letting the silence stretch. They expected tears, begging. Instead, I smiled. Interesting timing. I spent today exploring options too. I pulled out my phone. David, it's Margaret. Can you come over now? It's time, Brian went pale. Mom, what are you doing? Taking care of business, sweetheart. David Morrison will be here in 10 minutes to explain some changes. You might want to sit down. David arrived, briefcase in hand, his expression grim. Good evening, Margaret, Brian, Jessica. I smiled. David, why don't you explain what we accomplished today? With Emma asleep upstairs, he dropped a bomb. As of today, Brian and Jessica no longer have power of attorney over Margaret's affairs. It's been revoked. Brian shot up. Planning to use? We weren't planning anything. Sit down, son, I said softly. We both know that's a lie. Jessica's face was white. Margaret, why would you do this? Because 8-year-olds hear better than you think. Emma told me about your plan to put me in a home and take my money. The silence was deafening. David continued, Margaret has transferred all her assets, $637,000, to new accounts at a different bank. Jessica gasped, you can't do this. You gave us that money. David was calm. There was no loan agreement. The money was contingent on Margaret living here permanently. If that's breached, she can demand repayment with interest, I added. Brian ran his hands through his hair. Mom, please, let's talk reasonably. You don't understand what you're doing. Oh, I understand, I said, standing. You plan to have me declared incompetent to control my finances. You isolated me, used me, but you don't get to count money that was never yours. Jessica tried one last plea. Margaret, we care about you. I laughed, sharp and cold. You care about my social security, my free babysitting, my money, not me. David pulled out another folder. Margaret's updated her will. Emma gets everything held in trust until she's 25. Brian and Jessica get nothing. Jessica wailed, you can't do this. We have a mortgage. Emma's future. You should have thought of that before you tried to rob me. I snapped. Shady Oaks costs $4,000 a month. You had it all calculated. Put me away, sell my things, pocket the rest. Brian tried invoking Frank. Dad would want you to take care of me. That was his mistake. Your father worked 2 jobs for 30 years to build our savings because, I said, my voice low, he went without so we could leave you something. And you planned to steal it while I was alive. I picked up Frank's photo from the mantle, his kind face staring back. He'd say I should have done this sooner. David added, there's one more thing, an eviction notice. Margaret no longer feels safe here. You have 30 days to find her alternative arrangements. Brian's voice cracked. This is our house. Actually, I said, pulling out my folder, that $600,000 I gave you, I have records showing it paid your mortgage. No loan documents, but emails promising I'd always have a home here. You owe me that, plus 18 months of rent, babysitting savings, and emotional distress. About $700,000. Jessica's face crumbled. We don't have that kind of money. Then get creative, I said. Sell the house, liquidate your accounts, or declare bankruptcy. I don't care, David left, and Jessica sobbed. What about Emma? I paused at the stairs. I'm not abandoning her. I'm teaching her what happens when you betray the people who love you. I packed my things, slept soundly for the first time in months, and moved into my new apartment 3 weeks later. It's a 2-bedroom with a view of Riverside Park, costing $1,800 a month, a fraction of what I'd been pouring into their house. Brian called 14 times that first week, leaving voicemails about Jessica's panic attacks and Emma's questions. I deleted them all. Reasonable, he said. That word still makes me laugh. Then came a twist I didn't see coming. David called about their lawyer, Martin Burke, claiming I wasn't competent and hinting at irregularities in Frank's insurance policy. A second policy, $2 million, had named me and Linda Morrison, Frank's secretary, as beneficiaries, $1 million each. But I'd only received $500,000. Brian had handled the paperwork after Frank's death, telling me that was the total after taxes. He'd stolen the other $500,000, covering up his father's affair with Linda, who'd been pregnant and miscarried. I was reeling. Frank's betrayal, Brian's theft, years of lies. But instead of breaking, I got mad. I called Linda, now living in Atlanta. I know about the policy, I said. What do you know about my half? She was stunned, admitting Brian had convinced her the insurance company erred, giving her the full $1 million. We've both been played, I told her. I confronted Brian at his office, then over lunch at Giovanni's. I spoke to Linda, I said, watching his fork hit the plate. You stole $500,000 from me to hide your father's affair. He claimed he was protecting me, using the money to pay their debts. You stole from your grieving mother, I said, and called it charity. When Jessica texted that David was at their house with papers, I smiled. That'll be the criminal fraud charges. Insurance fraud, elder abuse, theft by deception, Brian begged, but I walked out, leaving him with a check and his crumbling lies. Brian was arrested for elder abuse and fraud, the news slashing across across local channels. Emma called, scared, and I rushed to her, explaining in simple terms that her daddy made bad choices. Jessica pleaded for forgiveness, but I was done enabling. Brian pleaded guilty, got 18 months in prison, and was ordered to repay $700,000. Jessica sold the house, moved to a small apartment, and got a job. Emma visits me every weekend. We swim, bake, and laugh. I'm taking art classes, joined a book club, and volunteer at an animal shelter. At 67, I'm living for me. When Brian was released, he called. Can we start over? I looked out at the park at a world I'd almost lost. Yes, I said, but on my terms. My story's about justice, new beginnings, and learning that being kind doesn't mean being weak. Thanks for listening. Drop a comment, share your story. Your voice matters.